Hey everybody, it's time for another installment of Rapid Fire with Rob Drieslein. We're doing this a little bit differently this month because of the worldwide pandemic and social distancing. We're trying to respect that. And so I am recording it this month with my guest, Tony Jones, the Reverend Hunter. You've seen his name in the print version of Outdoor News the past couple of years. You've seen him in the Star Tribune a lot also. And he's become a good friend of Outdoor News and a friend of myself, too, a fellow Gen Xer who's got a couple kids about the same age in college and younger. And Tony, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I mean, all things considered. I did look up the term for killing your own child. It's filicide. Filicide.
Yeah. No, we don't want to do that. I know. I've got 4 at home right now, and it is challenging. I'm still an essential worker, so I'm going into the office several days a week. But my wife is home with them.
Yeah, my wife's also a journalist, and she has a press pass, and she has a letter from Minnesota Public Radio for whom she freelances photography that she can show to law enforcement that she's on assignment and things like that.
Yeah. I've thought about using that some other times myself to get away from the house. But as we normally do this, Tony Abigail Dupay is going to read the questions, and then you and I will tackle them. How's that sound?
Great. That sounds awesome.
What are you doing to survive cabin fever under the stay-at-home order?
You know what? One thing I've been doing is I've got a yellow lab who is just about to turn 2, and I figured I got no excuse for saying this dog doesn't know hand signals. I've never had a dog that really followed whistle commands and hand signals, and this has been my reason. Every single day I'm getting him out there. I'm watching YouTube videos, getting him out there, and teaching him these hand signals. So no more excuses on, I've just never had the time to train my dog. You got nothing but time to train your dog right now. And then one other thing yesterday is my neighbor across the street. I live in Edina, nice bougie suburb, as my kids call it. and we can have chickens, but no roosters. Well, it turned out one of her hens was actually a rooster because it started cock-a-doodle-doing.
Sure, it started crowing. Go figure. Huh?
So
wow.
what's the neighbor to do? But she texts the hunter across the street and says, "Hey, I need you to take care of my rooster."
That's a great little anecdote. These hunters we're good for something, huh?
Yeah,
wow.
Good for something during COVID-19. So I dispatched a rooster yesterday and cooked it up.
Very good. Yeah, I've a reminder, folks. If you take your dog to a park, you want to be in an area where there's no nesting birds. We do want to keep people aware of that because that's definitely gonna get going. I've been doing some biking, that sort of thing, trying to stay in shape that way. I can tell you, there's a lot of people on the trails that have not been on them, maybe ever before. I'm glad they're getting out, but they might want to consider a little trail etiquette and I would imagine it's even worse closer into the city. The Minneapolis lakes, I wouldn't want to get near that right now.
No, I've known people who've gone, and I have a relative who went and took one walk around Lake Harriet and was like, I'm never going back. There's way too many people there. So I met one of my buddies for a walk the other day. We walked city streets. We walked 6 feet apart. He walked right down. I had my dog, so I was on the curb, and he walked right down the center of the city streets, and we walked about 4 miles and caught up. So it is possible, but we're taking a lot of precautions.
Any good outdoors reading you'd recommend right now to stay spiritually centered?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. Some of the classic outdoors writers were overtly spiritual in their writings, and I'd particularly point to Sigurd Olson and Aldo Leopold. These were 2 guys like you and me, upper Midwesterners, raised in the church, and they definitely wove their spirituality into their writings. They weren't in any ways, either of them, they weren't really proselytizing or they're not heavy-handed with it. They're just, they just recognize the fact that what they do outdoors connects to their own spirituality and their spiritual journey. And I appreciate that because I think in this era, 40, 50 years after those guys wrote, a lot of people in our outdoors writing industry are a little nervous, like they don't necessarily want to show the hand where they are religion-wise.
Sure.
but I appreciate that about those guys. I'd also say this book that I just finished, it's right behind me here. It's called Lakota America, and it's this incredible history of the Lakota people who started, their earliest recorded history. Their spiritual center was Lake Mille Lacs. And then they got pushed west as the European settlers pushed the Iroquois west. The Iroquois were an eastern tribe that were very warlike. They pushed a lot of the woodland tribes west, and the one tribe that was most successful at making that transition to becoming a plains hunting tribe were the Lakota.
Right.
And it's a fascinating history. And then finally, the other book behind me, of course, is my own book, my own most recent book. It's called Did God Kill Jesus? And for those people who are watching or listening who are Christian and are interested in kind of a different take on Lent and Good Friday and the meaning of the crucifixion, I would humbly submit that that's something they could read.
Absolutely. No, back to the Lakota point real quick. I think a lot of people, maybe don't understand that when we talk about Lake Mille Lacs and the treaty claims, that involves Ojibwa bands, which weren't there that long ago. That was traditional Lakota ancestral land. So kind of interesting.
Right. Yeah, they moved west, and the Lakota really, we know them as a Missouri River tribe. Right. That's where they became so dominant, really an empire that spanned many thousands of square miles. But you're right. That's exactly right. They preceded the Ojibwe around Lake Mille Lacs.
Yeah, no, fascinating stuff. Next question, Abigail.
People who follow you on social media or saw your story One Last Hunt in the Star Tribune know you recently lost your dog. Tell us about him.
Because you want to make me cry? Is that
that, man?
What you're trying to do is make me cry? I have never received, in everything I've written a dozen books, I've written scores of articles for you in the Strib and elsewhere. I've never received as much feedback as I have on that. I mean, guys wrote me, I got dozens of emails. I'm writing this with tears in my eyes, because the conceit of that article was my dog is the greatest hunting dog of all time. And how many RIP dog stories have you run in the outdoor news?
A lot of them. Yeah.
Because every guy loves his dog, and gal too. I mean, hunters love our dogs. We love our dogs, and everybody thinks their dog is the best. So the conceit of my article was my dog's the best hunting dog ever, and I just put him down. But then what I tried to do in that piece was to show, no, this guy really was special, not just because he was such an incredible dog, but because the 10 years of his life spanned the 10 hardest years of my life.
Wow, interesting. Yeah.
I got him, I was dead broke, going through a divorce. I'd been foreclosed on, had no job. And the woman, in the midst of my divorce, I'd started dating a woman who's now my wife. And she lived in Dallas. We were kind of long distance getting to know each other. She sent me a check for $400 and said, I want you to go buy that dog.
Oh my gosh.
So I went out and bought the dog in Menominee, Wisconsin at a place called Barley Pop Kennels. And that dog just became my companion, man. I mean, it turned out he was just an incredible hunter. His name was Albert. And he and I hunted all over the upper Midwest. He chased waterfowl. He chased pheasants. He was amazing.
I met him around campfire last fall, right? Smoking a cigar with you, I believe?
That's exactly right. Yeah, he's a great dog. So I'm happy that I got a young guy, Crosby, and I'm training. He's the one I'm training. But I don't know. They say, you tell me this. What do you think about this? They say every hunter gets one good dog in their lives. Like a lot of decent dogs, but every hunter gets the one perfect dog for them. And I don't know if that's an old wives' tale or whatever, but if that's the truth, I'm guessing Albert was that dog for me.
Well, I think maybe there's one dog that every hunter, every person really gives their heart to, every dog owner. But I don't think we're restricted to one good dog. I think if you look at the writings of Gary Clancy and to a lesser extent maybe Tony Peterson, just because Tony's younger, they've had some great dogs. And They weren't limited to just one, and I don't think you will be either, Tony. Yeah. Let's hey, why don't we got to keep it going here. We'll jump to our next question. Abigail, go ahead.
Does the Reverend Hunter ever encounter any backlash among people who suggest guns and killing of game for sport isn't compatible with religion?
Maybe we already addressed this a little bit, Tony, with your chicken owner next door. It sounds like you're kind of embraced by the neighbors.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, she grew up on a farm in South Dakota, so she understands that chickens, are a short-lived animal, and that roosters can't live in the suburbs. But yeah, I do. I definitely do. I have. You probably don't get it so much feedback in the outdoor news, but when I've written for the Star Tribune, there are comments on the website, on the Star Tribune website, that'll say, we shouldn't be eating animals and this is violent and things like that. I'm in a funny place because I'm pretty progressive politically and theologically, and yet I'm a gun owner. So the people I spend time with theologically, like in the church world, most of them are really strongly anti-gun. And in fact, there's a anti-gun documentary made by some friends of mine called Beating Guns. And it's about this ministry where people bring their guns, and there's this passage in the Old Testament and you'll beat their swords into plowshares, and they melt down guns and turn them into garden tools as kind of an act of anti-gun movement. It's obviously they're not going to do away with many guns, but they have public events and they have a blacksmith there, and he takes these guns and melts them down and turns them into garden tools and gives them out to people. And I'm in the documentary as like the minority voice, as a gun owner in the documentary. So I think, in that sense, I'm trying to be a voice of reason. I'm not a hardcore right winger. I don't own any handguns. I don't own any ARs or anything like that, but I do have multiple shotguns, and I'm, not private about my use of them. So it does put me in a interesting spot among my peers. Have you converted any non-gun owners into hunters, or people who now maybe respect guns and understand there's a place for firearms in our society? I don't know that I don't know. Yes, I would say I've converted people to at least they grudgingly acknowledge. What I'll often hear from anti-gun people in the Christian world is they'll say, well, we're not talking about you. Like, I'm okay with hunting. Mm-hmm. I just don't like guns, et cetera, for other reasons. Okay. So what I'm trying to do is nuance the conversation among them. But I do have some friends who grew up anti-gun and are now, I do have a few friends who are now gun owners, and maybe I think I've been part of their journey toward that. That's good. Yeah, my dad and I have a couple stories like that ourselves with some people who were anti-hunting, and now they what's a great gateway we have found for people who are anti-hunting is turkey hunting. Oh, because everybody likes to, unless you're a vegetarian, everybody likes to eat turkeys, right? And I know a number of people who have gotten into turkey hunting, killed a few turkeys, and said, maybe I'll try this deer hunting thing too, or pheasant hunting. So, anyway, just another little thought there. Abigail, next question. Do you miss professional sports? Tony, I thought about this one a little bit for myself, and I was a little sad on opening day, but I got to tell you personally, I don't really miss professional sports that much. Where do you fall? I don't miss them. I miss only baseball. I don't miss any other professional sport other than baseball. It's funny watching these newspapers trying to keep their sports sections alive with nothing to report on, and I don't envy them because that's tough. And I know that for sport, the NFL is a $1 trillion business or something. Yeah, it doesn't get taxed, by the way, but yeah. Yeah, it's insane. It's insane. And these people, I see people go to Vikings games and pay $150 or $250 for a ticket. And I'm like, you realize you're paying to watch somebody else's business. Like, that's what's happening on the field, is there's a business going on between you, right? Like, are business people who own one business, and then there's another business that comes into town, and it does kind of boggle my mind. I don't miss it. And it just today, the day that we're recording this, there's all this news on social media about, that they're floating these ideas like, what if all the baseball teams travel to Arizona, they play in empty stadiums, and they're all quarantined in hotel rooms? Or they're talking about having the NFL season be played in biodomes or something like that.
I hadn't heard that one yet.
Because they want the TV ratings.
Oh,
right?
yeah, that TV money, you bet. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I miss baseball. Like you, I'm a baseball guy. Traditionally have been. I don't know. I've kind of fallen off even that the past few seasons. I used to be a Twins season ticket holder, but I'm just not as into it. I used to love, when we were kids in the 80s and 90s, the NBA playoffs was fantastic back in that era. But I don't know. I guess really since Garnett left, I haven't shown a whole lot of interest in the NBA. So I'm kind of pretty much where you are with professional sports, Tony. Abigail, we got to keep it going here, don't we?
You wrote a great series in Star Tribune last year on BWCAW. Planning any BWCAW or camping trips with the family this year?
Tony, I know all my trips are kind of in flux right now. We're just trying to figure things out. I hope within the next couple of weeks maybe we start getting some reservations together.
Yeah, Rob, I have one permit purchased, and I got another week blocked out. I've got a permit purchased for to go in on June 1st. I appreciate you mentioning that Star Tribune Boundary Waters. We should talk about some of the things I've written for Outdoor News. We can't just talk about my Star Tribune articles. But the startribune.com/BWCA is where you can find that series. And we did the Voyageurs Highway. But here's the deal. We stopped on South Fowl, and we came out on McFarland. We didn't actually finish. We didn't do the 9.5 mile Grand Portage.
Right.
So our plan is, and again, like you, I don't know if it's going to happen or what the deal is going to be in June 1st in Minnesota. But the plan was, and the permit is for going in on June 1st, back in on McFarland where we came out, and spending a couple days fishing. Because the last article ends with my son wanting to catch this smallmouth, and I'm like, no, we have to go. The car is waiting for us.
Okay.
We're going to go back in. He's going to catch that smallie.
Okay.
And then we're going to canoe to the Grand Portage, and we're going to
wrap it up, huh?
And we're going to dip our canoes in Gitchigumi. So.
Good. Okay. Well, the highlight of that piece really for me was the dynamic between you and your son, and it sounds like he still wants to go back, so that's good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, and then I had another trip planned for August with my two college kids, because the thing was they were going to both be home for the last 2 weeks of August. But now, again, who knows?
You were unimpressed with celebrities singing Imagine. Was it the celebrities, or the song, or a general dislike of the Beatles?
Tony,
Yeah.
you and I talked a little bit off air about this. You are not a Beatles guy. You're not a John Lennon guy specifically, it sounds
I mean,
like.
the Beatles, I think, are maybe the most overrated band in history. We're just going to let that one sit. Are
Okay.
you a Beatles guy?
We might come back to that. Go ahead, though. I'll let you complete your thought.
I mean, if you want to make people mad on Twitter, you just type that. You just type that the Beatles are the most overrated band in history. You will get a lot of feedback from people. Yeah. But it's true. I mean, it's like I can prove it using data. No, it's an opinion. And, the more I think about it, the more I think that it's actually the John Lennon songs I don't like. And that Imagine song is the worst of all. It's just it's so pretentious and treacly and melodramatic and I mean, yeah, Imagine No Religion, of course, as a religion guy, I don't like that so much. But yeah, I don't like it. And then those stars doing it. What was awesome was the backlash.
There was a lot of backlash to that. Yeah,
people just ate them alive. I loved it.
Yeah, I love that. I definitely love that. I'm actually kind of a John Lennon guy, and I've gone back and forth because there were some terrible things about John Lennon. The way he treated his son, what he did to his first wife, the way he treated Paul, I think was pretty horrible. But at the same time, the lightning in the bottle that those two guys captured with their songwriting, and the fact that they were both tenors, and weren't they like a perfect third apart or something? The harmonizing they did, I don't think you can blow that off. I don't think they were overrated. I mean, clearly they're the huge, biggest band in the history of the world. Do they deserve that much accolades? Maybe not. Maybe they're a bit overrated in that regard. But the volume of songs they cranked out, Tony, you don't respect that?
I mean, I don't. I don't know that volume is a measure of greatness necessarily.
You know, you're a guitar player. You play guitar, right?
A little bit, a little church, 3 chords and the truth. You know.
Try to play the triplets on All My Lovin' sometime. You familiar with that song?
Yes, of course.
It's a great song. I think a great song. And, you know, the lead, of course, is being played by George. But in the background, John is playing these triplets, which I think are tremendously hard. And to me are like a testament to his musical ability.
All right. Well, I respect your opinion on all things. So I will. I'll try to, give the Beatles another try. My kids love them, and the funny thing is, like, we'll be driving in the car, and we got some classic rock on shuffle on Spotify or whatever. And I'm driving, so I got my thumb right on the skip button on my steering wheel. I can skip it as soon as the Beatles come on. Some kind of a joke.
Hair trigger. Huh?
Yeah, but give me Zeppelin any day, man. Zeppelin's
part of it is my daughter loves the Beatles, and so I'm listening to a lot of Beatles right now. But anyway, last question, huh, Abigail?
You had a standing offer of have gun, will preach. Does that still exist?
In the past, you have told local communities you'll come out and preach if you can get access to some hunting land. Is that right? And is that a standing offer?
Rob, it's an open offer. It's how I got the name Reverend Hunter, and it is a standing offer. I will come and preach at your church if you hook me up with some awesome hunting in your area.
And so you've traveled all over the Dakotas doing exactly that, right?
Been to both Dakotas and Iowa so far doing that, going to preach at a church, and then the pastor will say, hey, I got some guys. They'll be at your hotel at 6 a.m, and they'll take you out hunting. And I met some awesome people.
I bet.
Yeah, it's been really fun. And then, I get to preach at their churches, and it's really fun. So, yeah, open offer. Anybody, hit me up, reverendhunter.com, and let me know.
Perfect way to close this out. Tony, thanks a lot for spending some time with me here. We'll do this again. I hope we can do a rapid fire in person one of these days.
That'd be awesome.
All right, thanks so much, Tony. Take care, my friend.
Yeah, be safe.
All right, reverendhunter.com if you want to see what Tony's got. And real quick, you got a podcast. What's your podcast?
Yeah, it's also the Reverend Hunter.
Okay.
So
yeah, and you can find it there at reverendhunter.com.
Yeah, you're a future guest. I mean, we've already recorded our interview, so everybody should listen for Rob's episode, which will be out in a couple months.
Where we talk about religion, so that'll be fun. So, all right. Tony, thanks again.
Thanks.
Tony Jones, reverendhunter.com. Thanks, everybody, for joining us here on Rapid Fire. We're gone. Thank you, Abigail. Great job editing this up again, and we'll be back next month. I'm Rob for Outdoor News.